The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Come to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of Be Awesome. Find positivity throughout your life and work. Just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.
Hello and be awesome, everybody. I'm Mark Resnick, co-host of the Be Awesome podcast. I'm not in the studio with Josh. I'm just getting over a nasty summer cold. And so I am at home. And today we have a very special guest. And I was just saying to Josh off air, for the first time, we've actually received a very nice bio of our guest. So I'm going to take a minute here and I'm going to read it real quickly. So bear with me. Our guest today has an eclectic and unusual background. After 14 years running one of the nation's top chiropractic clinics, he became a sought-after corporate entertainer. He went on to write a best-selling book called UnHypnosis and a series of other critically acclaimed personal growth programs. He now travels the globe sharing insight and wisdom about how to live an inspired life while entertaining groups with his mind-boggling hypnosis and mind-reading shows. To date, Dr. Steve has hypnotized over 30,000 people. His fans include sports figures, business leaders, and A-list movie stars. He's been seen on national television, has been featured in major magazines, and has shared the stage with top business speakers like Jack Canfield and the late Zig Ziglar. Here today to share his insights into the top characteristics of highly successful people, please welcome best-selling author, international speaker, physician, mindfulness coach, transformational hypnotist, and all-around nice guy, Steve Taubman. Dr. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I know that introduction makes it sound like I can't hold a job.
No, quite the opposite. I didn't tell Josh, although this is the first time we're meeting face to face. Josh, I volunteered you to get hypnotized here on the podcast today. I hope you're
absolutely not. It terrifies me. I've been in the audience for those, and I feel like I got hypnotized, even though I wasn't one of the people that they felt like I was getting the trance. The back and forth.
Good.
Yeah. I actually, because I didn't know, I done know, this is great when we do no homework and stop, Mike. I actually think I was in one of Dr. Steve's audiences at one point. So you looked familiar when you came on, and I'm like, that looks familiar. And then I heard the hypnosis, and I was like, oh, wait a second. I think I was in an event in Florida with him a couple of years ago. So congratulations, welcome. And
Here. Thanks for having me.
And if I say anything foolish, I blame it on hypnosis.
Okay, that's the way to go. Listen, Josh, we have so much to unpack here, and I know I was late, but we got a lot going on. Dr. Steve, thank you. Welcome to the show. Now, you and I have a mutual friend. It's Alan Rubel, right? You're friends with Alan?
Yes.
Okay, Alan. Josh is one of the co-authors of my new book, The Greatest Burden is Greatest Blessing, and Steve has endorsed it and shared it with his community. He's got quite a large following.
Yeah. My mother was in that book. Oh. There's all the connections. There you go.
Yes, it's all come together. Dr. Steve, we have so much to cover here. I just want to. I told you ahead of time that we don't intentionally prepare for these shows. It's not that we're lazy. It's just that we just like to see where the conversation goes. But your introduction gave me so much fodder here. Hypnosis. Are some people not susceptible to it? Or can you get anyone under? Because I've never been able to let myself go. And I'm just wondering if there is a certain personality that just can't go under.
It's a good question. I'm glad we're kind of just flying by the seat of our pants here. I have to tell you before we get started that, of course, I've done hundreds of these kind of podcasts. And the worst one I ever did was when there was a guy who had a list of questions that he'd written out in advance. And he'd ask the question, I would answer it, and he'd go on to the next question, never commenting, never acknowledging, if I said something funny. It was just torture. So I'm very happy that this is one of those kind of fly by the seat of your pants kind of things. Big believer in intuition and serendipity, and that things happen exactly the way they're meant to. So anyway, having said that, in answer to your question, yes, hypnosis is not foolproof. In other words, I can't hypnotize everybody. If I'm using hypnosis for therapeutic purposes, I don't care as much about how susceptible somebody is, because I have all the time in the world to kind of work with them and find a way in the door, right? So ultimately, most people will be able to experience some degree of trance if you have enough time to do it. But when I'm doing stage shows or, some kind of a stage demonstration, I want somebody who can get hypnotized pretty quickly, who's not going to be resistant, because, I've got a job to do and I've got people to entertain. And so I look for certain qualities or characteristics, and I'll tell you a little bit about what they are. So basically, the two most important characteristics for somebody to get hypnotized are they've got to be able to relax and they've got to be able to concentrate, which are two qualities that are far too rare in our world. But yeah,
Like Josh, he's talking to you.
No, he's not talking to me.
You can't relax or
Yeah.
concentrate.
I can do both, and I'm doing both right now while multitasking because I'm convinced.
He's laser focused. So
Laser focused. I'm trying to pull this up because I was just trying to pull the event up.
Oh,
I was trying to pull the
was it
event up.
Florida Association of Realtors or
No, I did Florida Association of School Business Officials, but I did FAPA. I did a whole bunch of Florida acronyms I'm trying to pull up. But no, I'm gonna find it because I remember it. And
yeah, I've also done the Florida what's the name? Florida Home Healthcare Association, I think it was called.
Florida, that might have been it. Is it in
Yeah,
Orlando?
there's videos on my website about all
Yeah,
that
I'm gonna
stuff.
find it, and I'm gonna see myself in stage, and I'm gonna be like, "Wow, let's talk about the 7 lines of separation."
That's funny. So yeah, relaxation and concentration, which together create heightened imagination, and imagination is kind of a key element in hypnosis. Right after willingness, you have to be willing to do it, and you have to be able to relax and concentrate enough to be able to stimulate your own imagination, and then from there it becomes easier and easier.
So as a therapist, though, just again, we're going to bounce a little bit, but what about the people who are on a more serious note, who are a little bit unwilling, trauma, people who have had, they want to get the past out, or you know what I mean? Like, are they sort of willing, even though they don't want to do it, they want to get to the truth? Does that count as willingness?
Well, I'm not a full-time therapist. I have at points in my life been a therapist, but it's not my primary profession. When I've been a therapist, when I've done that kind of thing, I'd say the most important thing is a feeling of safety. So people who are coming from a traumatic background, they want to feel safe, they want to feel respected, they want to feel heard. And if you can create an environment where those things are true, then they'll give up a little bit more of their control, because we're all control freaks, right? We all want everything to be, under our, even though we suck at it, we still think, we should be in control. If I'm in control, everything's going to be great. Of course, that's never the case, but it's the illusion we live with.
So my question is, because we were talking while we were waiting for Mark, you told me, was it a chiropractor?
Yeah, I had a chiropractic practice for
14
years.
How do you go from being a chiropractor and having a successful chiropractic practice in Vermont to being a hypnosis specialist and doing all the things that you do? Like that's amazing. When I say, I'm like, wow, how do you shift gears from that? So how did you reinvent yourself, and why?
That's a good question. Well, my first book, UnHypnosis, here's a copy of that one. UnHypnosis, How to Wake Up, Start Over, and Create the Life You're Meant to Live, basically tells that story because it's an interesting journey whenever you decide you're going to take a lifetime's worth of training and decide you can just kind of scrap it, right? Just throw it away and start over. Of course, in the long run, looking back over my career or careers, I'd say that everything I've done has informed the next thing, right? I've gotten something out of everything I've done. So there's no way I could have been good at what I did if I hadn't already learned some of the skills I learned as being a chiropractor. But anyway, the lineage was that I had been practicing chiropractic for a number of years, and suddenly I got an interest in magic. I started doing close-up magic, and that's how I tortured my patients. Was showing them magic tricks before they'd been perfected. But I had a lot of fun with it, and that became kind of a secondary profession. And the way that happened, I'd been about halfway through my chiropractic practice. I'd just gotten out of a relationship, and I needed something to do with my hands. So I started my magic career, and I was doing kind of moonlighting in restaurants and banquets and whatnot. And then I realized I was an entertainer first and foremost. And meanwhile, my practice was successful, but I wasn't enjoying it.
Hmm.
And it was starting to be less successful because I wasn't enjoying it. You know, that horrible feeling that I'm sure, well, I hope you haven't had, but when you're doing something you don't love, and every minute feels like an hour,
Hmm.
it's tough, So you have to eventually decide either I'm going to really shift my attitude, which is a viable option, and I've did it several times, or I'm going to throw in the towel. The one thing you don't want to do is just keep doing it feeling miserable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I left my chiropractic practice and I took a year off and I traveled and I had some pretty remarkable experiences along the way. And somewhere in there, I started getting interested in hypnosis. And then I was given an opportunity to study hypnosis with a master. And that's how I ended up going from being a chiropractor, being a magician, and then becoming a stage hypnotist. And I was doing primarily for stage purposes, mostly for fun.
Yeah.
Uh, but but I was also developing more and more interest and understanding of how the mind works,
Hmm.
and a lot of stuff about mindfulness. What's behind our thinking.
Well,
Yeah.
where do you find a hypnosis master? Just like the yellow pages are gone. I'm guessing there isn't one in there. Like that can't be. I'm like, it's amazing. Like, is there a like a
Yes.
directory of hypnosis masters?
There are a couple of organizations. I actually got I got a piece of promotional material from this guy who was running workshops and courses, and his name was Scott McFall. He was a clinical and stage hypnotist, very successful in both of those endeavors. And I went out to Bismarck, North Dakota, and spent time with him and did a course with him, and then a little bit of an apprenticeship. And then I filled in the gaps when I got back home with courses through the American Board of Hypnotherapy and the National Guild of Hypnotists, and got some certifications. And the funniest part about all this is if you want to be a stage hypnotist, um, all the training in the world isn't going to get you over that one huge gap, which is you got to actually do it.
Right.
So even if you know everything about it and you've learned exactly what to do, until you do it, you don't know if you can really do it.
Hmm.
So the first gig was pretty scary, but luckily successful.
Oh my gosh, talk about stress. But
Yeah.
now, I obviously you're an author, and at some point along this journey, you became more than an entertainer, and you developed, like you said, you developed that interest in what makes people tick. Tell me about how where did the book? I know there's more than one book, but when did you first write your first book, and then how did that continue that path?
So at one point along the way in my hypnosis career, I became the official hypnotist for MTV Spring Break.
Oh, that had to have been a good gig. Like in the 90s.
Yeah, it's a dirty
Oh,
job at somebody's wedding.
Cancun, Panama City Beach.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Oh,
dirty
It
job.
was Jamaica, Barbados, and the Bahamas.
oh my,
Um,
how do you get that gig? That's amazing. Like that's a book. That's a
it's
series of
worthwhile.
books.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. If I tell for sure. So I was performing, and now while I was building up my career as a hypnotist, I was also getting more and more serious about my mindfulness practice and meditating, and developing more of an understanding of that. Uh, so so what happened was these two things kind of came together at a very specific moment. I was doing a show in Barbados, no, wait a minute, in Jamaica for MTV Spring Break. And I had I had a whole bunch of people on stage, and I had them doing all the things that you've
Hmm.
probably seen in a hypnosis show. I've got them milking a cow and
Oh yeah.
conducting an orchestra. I've got one guy thinks he's pregnant. I've got another guy thinks he's the father. And in the middle of all this, I decided to try something new. So I took one of my subjects, and this was completely impromptu. I just wanted to see what would happen, and I had a good show going. So, just like with a comedian, if your show's going well, that's when you take out the new material. So I took this one guy and I said, when you wake up, three things are going to happen. I said, number one, you don't believe you're hypnotized, even though you are. I said, number two, this is the worst show you've ever seen, and you are pissed and you want out. And I said, number three, there's an invisible wall 3 feet in front of you. So, and I woke everybody up. I said, how's everybody doing? And this one guy screams, you suck. I said, excuse me? He goes, the show's terrible. I said, oh, well, then leave. And the guy gets up and he starts leaving. He goes, and he hits this invisible wall. And he's like pushing and pushing, and his face is turning red, and he's sweating, and he can't get through it. And he finally sits back down and he crosses his arms and he starts to pout like this. I said, what's the problem? He goes, nothing. I said, are you hypnotized? He goes, no. I said, are you having fun? He goes, no. I said, well, then why don't you leave? The guy thinks for a minute and he goes, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction. And that was it. That was like this sort of epiphany for me, because I realized in that moment that that's like all of us, right? We're all trying to get somewhere in our lives, and we start moving toward that somewhere, and then we hit our invisible walls, those barriers that keep us from going forward. And those barriers live inside of us. They're not external. But we don't know that we're hypnotized, right? So he thinks he's not hypnotized, but he is, and he can't move. And that's the way I started thinking about the entire sort of spiritual process, right? It's like, where we have a mind, we have infinite potential. We have the possibility of being inspired, the possibility of being motivated, and we also carry with us all this baggage, all these invisible walls, these barriers that stop us, and then we push furiously against them like this guy did until we exhaust ourselves, and then we finally give up and we make excuses for why we don't accomplish what we want to accomplish, because we never dealt with those invisible walls. And I think that's our life's journey, right? I think we all have that stuff, and when we get through one layer, then we move along a little ways, and you come to find out a few years later that there's a lot more to do, and you start all over again.
I love it. I love it. So
That's how the book came about. That's why the book is called UnHypnosis.
okay, that was the first book. Okay, because I have a copy of Bulletproof. It's on my Kindle. I've been reading. Is that how many books have you written, and what's the sequence kind of?
So UnHypnosis came first, and I wrote that back in, I think it was 2004 or 2005, something like that. And that kind of got me on the speaking circuit a little bit, and then I did a couple of other things. One was an audio program called UnHypnosis for sales professionals. So there was a book, but it was like a spiral bound book, but it came with like a whole album of cassettes. Remember the days when we used cassettes?
Still have them.
Yeah, me too.
I just don't have a cassette player. It's terrible.
I know, it's frustrating. Well, I did digitize these. So it's worth digitizing some of those things, because I have all the great stuff, all the old Dennis Waitley and Mark Victor Hansen and all that really good stuff, and Brian Tracy and all those guys who are now, I've been able to say I've spoken on the stages with all those guys. But back then they were like, I was like very starstruck by all of them. So anyway, that was my second one, was on hypnosis for sales professionals. And then I was sort of embraced by the direct selling world, the Direct Selling Women's Alliance, and a lot of, a multi-level marketing association, things like that. They bring me in to do like mindset talks. So I wrote a program that was
So you're the one we have to blame for all that?
I'm to blame for people.
for all the family relatives that are selling us all their multi-level marketing stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a lot of good stuff there too, and there are like amazing people in that world. And
there's great products. I think that if by just at face value what you're saying, I think if there was more professional training for people, opposed to saying go sell to all your friends and family, and leverage that and actually teach the art of selling, because it is an art. I don't care what anybody says. I'm a salesperson at the end of the day. It'd be much better.
And that's like the what's the name of it? ANMP, the Association of Network Marketing Professionals, has sort of taken the charge of that and tried to put together a lot of training and whatnot to just get people to like do it right and do it with integrity and be effective. So I've spoken on their stages a few times, and I created a program called UnHypnosis for network marketers, direct sellers, and entrepreneurs. And it was an audio program. It was basically just getting their head right. It was like hypnotizing people to get out of their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the next one. And then a few years later, I did this one. Buddha in the Trenches,
Mm.
which is probably my favorite. It's the timeless system for developing unshakable performance under pressure. And the whole notion of it was, um, that if you look at what the classic image of the Buddha, like just sitting quietly, calm and peaceful. Imagine that the Buddha in the trenches, like, in World War II, and the guns are flying and, the bullets are flying, and he's just being calm and peaceful. And that's the metaphor I wanted to convey. It was like, what if in the midst of your crazy, chaotic life, you could maintain a certain amount of serenity and equanimity and calm and even joy? What would that look like? And how would you do it? So that's what that book is about. And then a couple of years later, maybe not even 2 years later, I basically retooled the book to create Bulletproof.
Yeah, I was going to say this is the same
Essentially,
concept.
it's the same thing. I just made it less potentially secular, because some people, particularly in the corporate world, don't want to see the word Buddha on anything. So then I wrote Bulletproof, but it was essentially a retelling of the same story.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. I'm a huge fan of meditation. Josh has been slowly embracing it, although I'm not sure what the update is.
I can tell you, I talked to my guy Will yesterday. As a matter of fact, he's doing a whole nother session. He's got me
Okay.
lined up for it. And so, as I told him, it's not every day. I do it when I can. I actually was talking to him when I was heated about something. He just said, breathe. And I said, I know, I got to go take my 15 minutes in the corner and go do timeout. But it's a work in progress. Dr. Steve, it's Mark and I'm challenged with a lot of things. And one of them is Mark is very, as far as when you talk about balance, he's got his stuff together. And I don't. You just need to go on the road with me for 2 days and realize that my life is just nuts. But I'm mostly okay with it. But Mark has challenged me to go outside of my comfort zone and do some things to try to align myself better and give time for me and to breathe and to do all this stuff, right, Mark? And we're actually going to make it the last chapter of the book. And so I did a 9-week. Will Schneider is his name. He's a New York City, lives in Queens, yoga instructor, mindfulness and meditation expert. And my fiance, by the way, has all the certifications in yoga and Reiki. I say it wrong, and mindfulness and meditation. And I don't listen to anybody about it. I listened to Mark finally, and I sat down with Will and I did a 9-week program where you're supposed to do a practice every day, and you do a once a week check-in. And so I did most of it, which is better than none of it, which I did nothing before Mark put me to this challenge. So I'm a work in progress. So every once in a while he throws a little dig at me and says, hey, just haven't heard about what you're doing. Haven't heard if you closed your eyes and sat still for a while and let the inside of your brain get out. But yeah, no, I'm still going, Mark. Don't you worry.
Nice.
Always worried about you. Yeah.
It's his tough love, positive reinforcement that I love to get on a regular basis.
Well, what I've discovered is that like a lot of my favorite comedians, like the smartest people I've ever seen, like Jerry Seinfeld, for example, or Steve Martin or Jim Carrey, all these like brilliant guys. They're all like avid meditators.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Seinfeld's been doing Zen meditation since he was in his 20s. And so I have a lot of respect for, people who do that, who, they're not trying to become like just somebody other than who they are. They're not trying to be super placid and peaceful. They're just trying to like cut through the bullshit of their own brains.
Right.
And then you can still get to be who you are. And then like, you strike me as a kind of a fun guy to be around, and you're kind of a little grumpy, a little bit of a curmudgeon, but in a way that makes people laugh. And that's when you're meditating and when you're mindful and you watch yourself be yourself, it's even more fun.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I initially I was the word's not intimidated by myself, but when I started to get into this, like to the thinking and breathing, and I learned about box breathing, I learned about some other breathing, and I was just listening and going through this whole thing, and then trying not to think about anything, and you think about everything. There were some things that I got really uncomfortable with myself for a good couple of weeks. And then finally I was just like, all right, just let everything. I mean, I'm by myself. I'm in a room. It's peaceful and quiet. Maybe there's some music playing in the background of whatever he's telling me to do. but it's not uncomfortable. It's just different, right? It takes some getting used to.
Well, it's amazing how much, you could be, like you said, you're all by yourself in a quiet room and it's noisy as hell.
Yes,
Heck.
yes, yeah, yeah. And I am a good time, by the way.
Yeah.
You had that spot right
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Um,
He's not a curmudgeon, by the way.
yeah.
He's the life of the party.
Uh,
I I can't do the breathing, mindfulness or meditation. I'm a strict mantra guy.
all right.
I have trouble with the breathing part, but it works for me, and it's worked wonders for me, and I love it. In fact,
Nice.
when you mentioned the Buddha in the trenches, and did you watch the Olympics last night? And
I did
that
not.
that that kid from Worcester, and I'm like, talk about Buddha in the trenches. Did you see it? Did you guys see that?
No.
See it. Now I'm gonna have to go back and watch it.
Oh my God, the men's gymnastics team won the bronze medal for the first time since 2008, I think. And
Nice.
this poor kid, do you know? I'm sorry if you know the story, but there's a kid from Worcester, Massachusetts, and he's only a pommel horse specialist. He does nothing else in the Olympics. Pommel horse, and he had to wait till all the team exercises were done, the bars, all the floor exercises. He was the very last performer out of every Olympian, and if he nailed his set, they were going to win the bronze, and he did. But he could see him all night long. Just mentally, he was just breathing and going through his routine, and he was a Buddha in the trenches, Dr. Steve.
That's awesome.
I was doing that preparing for my Joe DeCina podcast that got rescheduled to tomorrow. So I was the Buddha. I was the Buddha in the trenches. So
Dr. Steve, tell me a little bit more about sharing your insights or your insights into successful people. I'm guessing one of the best secrets that all successful people have is mindfulness. Is that what your research kind of showed?
Mostly what I find is most people who are successful have some way of essentially hypnotizing themselves, putting themselves into a state and reprogramming some of their own negativity as well. So that's, one of the things that consistently successful people will do is they'll understand, they'll have some mechanism for being their own mental guru.
Yeah.
And that's something that takes work, right?
And
That's
really, yeah. And some people are, I think that we're all born with different challenges, different levels of talent at these different things, right? So some people just get it right away, and other people it's just really, really hard. But when they discover something they can do, and like you said, it could just be sitting quietly, or it could be, using some kind of a mantra, or it could be some other kind of reprogramming your own thinking. I have a whole thought about mental reprogramming, and I talk about it in UnHypnosis. A lot of people are into affirmations, right? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone people.
Yes.
And in my experience, affirmations are sometimes useful and sometimes not as useful as you'd like them to be. And I think the reason for that and the remedy for that is that there's a sequence of events that has to happen for you to be successful. And the first thing that needs to happen is you need to learn how to get quiet. Right? Like we were talking about how noisy it is in your head when you're in a room all by yourself. That's a lot, right? So just learning how to get quiet to start with is important. And then the second thing is learning how to then, from that quiet place, identify those hypnotic patterns that are keeping you down, the negative stuff. You need to know how to release that, right? To let go of negative thought processes before you start to program in positive thought processes. So I think sometimes people try to cram a new thought on top of an old one, and it's just trying to gild the lily. You can't do it until you create space. So it's creating receptivity. And that's the whole concept of UnHypnosis, is to create a receptive mind. And when the mind is receptive, then it will receive new programs.
So if anyone's interested in reading one of your books, you recommend starting with that book as sort of the basis?
Well, it's the first one. Got to start with number one. It's like going to Jaws 3 and not seeing Jaws 1 first.
Well, it's not like you need to read one in order to know the other ones, and there's some repetition of some principles or stories, but I think it's probably it's a good evolution to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Be Awesome podcast. If you are enjoying our episodes, please give us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. Those ratings and reviews do make a difference in helping us get more exposure, more listeners, as well as giving people an insight and understanding as to what they could expect when they listen to our episodes. Thanks again, and you are awesome.
So tell us about, the life on the road, and what are some of the organizations you've worked with or helped, or your favorite ones to, kind of get booked at.
I've done a lot of stuff. More recently, like everything is pretty much pre-COVID, by the way, because once COVID came, the whole industry kind of went belly up. And I'm back on the road a little bit, but nothing like what I used to do. And part of it is because I'm feeling like I'm taking it easy. I'm chilling out a little bit.
We love that. We love the honesty.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it because it just gives more opportunity for me because I got to play catch
There
up.
you go.
You got started in the business a little bit sooner than I did, so you can get out and be comfortable or smell the roses a little more than I did. 22,000 miles flown the last 2.5 weeks, something like that. I went to Alaska, Texas twice, New Mexico, Chicago, Minneapolis.
Yeah, I hear that and I'm like, yes, I've been there, I've done that. I'm glad I'm not doing it right now.
Yeah. Well,
it's intense. It is intense.
Well, you have that evolution, right? So you start, like you said, that first time that you got up on stage and you're like, hope people listen, hope people get it. And for you have to have true audience participation. Like for me, I get up there, talk for an hour, and if they don't do anything, that's fine. I'm still there. I get paid. I just need to make sure it's good enough for somebody else to want to do the same thing, right?
Well, I've kind of evolved, the different ways of presenting myself to groups. I mean, I like doing associations, and so, for example, the ANFP, the Association of Network Marketing Professionals, that'll be a big event. That'll probably be, several thousand people. And what will typically happen is they'll have me come in and do a hypnosis show in the evening, and it's really fun and games, right? It's astonishing to see, but it also leaves people with questions. Like what the
Yeah.
what was that? Why did that happen? What's it all about? Why does it work? And what does it mean for me? And all that kind of thing. So then I'll come back the next day in the morning and I'll do a keynote, and I'll do more of a conventional keynote speech where I'm not involving the audience very much. I mean, I'm interactive, but it's really a speech. That's when I'm unpacking a lot of the, this is what you saw. And this is like, I'll tell you that story I told about the UnHypnosis and being stuck behind the wall, or other stories like that about just to illustrate how automatic our minds have become. How we're like sort of sleepwalking through life, and what do we need to do? What are some of the things you could do to wake up? And so that's kind of my message. So the groups I like talking to, I like talking to healthcare industry people because they tend to get it. They tend to be enthusiastic about that. I definitely like talking to people in in any sales industry, but particularly like network marketers. They're super enthusiastic. But I also like to talk to real estate agents and insurance people because they're kind of like they're working for somebody, but they're also entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So if you got somebody who's like got a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit, then they're thirsty for for something they can do, some leg up. How do I get better at what I do?
I was talking to my friend ChatGPT a couple nights ago.
Oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, and we were going deep. He or she and I, maybe they, I'm not sure, but I was doing some research on my talk about how much money is spent on personal development each year. And I think the latest numbers as of 2022 was like $45 billion on personal self-development. So anyways, and speaking
to
one
person?
No, no, that's Josh. Yeah, that's his annual budget for self-help.
Okay, yeah.
It's not enough.
What you were talking about just now about our we're kind of just like knee deep in our own baggage and what do you say to young people though, who are sort of like there's not enough personal development, I think, for the young people. And that's what my message is all about, is trying to get them to sort of see that negative self-talk and all that stuff isn't good. What Have you ever been in groups of younger people, and what is your message to them? Because I'm going to steal it tomorrow. I'm just going to let
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. No, I talked to like future business leaders of America and groups like that. You know, some of these, I forgot the name of that other big one. Somebody's name. I'll think of it.
Not Hugh O'Brien. Have you spoken to Hugh
Yeah,
O'Brien?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
That's right.
I was a Hugh O'Brien recipient. Loved
Okay,
it.
yeah. We'll be.
Yeah, that's great. Crazy
Yeah.
world.
They're receptive, but you know, having the ability to entertain them to start with, just getting them to laugh, and then kind of bring the hook in afterwards is one of the best ways to do it. You know, okay, you just saw all this stuff, you didn't understand it, but it was really fun. Like with magic or mind reading or those kinds of things. It's like I create a moment of astonishment, which you could do in other ways too, just tell a joke or whatever. But what you want to do is you want to create a shift in state. You know, like I mean, I'm a state of the state of mind. Like one state is I'm bored. That's a very unresourceful state. Another state is, you know, I'm curious. It's okay, but I'm fascinated, or I'm blown away, or I'm astonished. Is a higher state of consciousness, and if you can get somebody into a high enough state of consciousness, their minds open wide up. Right? It creates a gap in their thinking, and that's when you throw in the message. You know, so like I just did it. I've been doing a show lately called Mind Magic. And Mind Magic is like an hour long, hour and 10-minute long mind reading magic show. And it's got a lot of humor in it, but it's kind of mind-boggling stuff like predictions and mind reading and super memory stuff and like a lot of cool things like that. And I'll get to like the climax of the show, and I haven't said anything particularly about mindset yet.
Mm-hmm.
Might have said something at the beginning very briefly about how this really does help improve your mindset. And then I do it all. And then I get to a point where it's like everybody's like laughing or like astonished. And now I say, okay, hopefully I've earned the right to unpack a couple of concepts with you guys right now. So here are a few of the things that I think are worth remembering. And, you know, I'll say, I'll talk a little bit about the interconnectedness, how we're connected to each other. You know, none of us are as smart as all of us. And you can't be your best self by yourself, right? And I'll talk about the importance of silence, and then my motto that I wrote in this book that's gotten requoted 1,000 times is "Don't believe everything you think."
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'll talk about those kinds of things, but I'll talk about them after I feel like I've got complete buy-in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With the young adults, kids, what I found, you're spot on, give them a hook. But one of the things is that older generations tend to want to hear, and the younger generations want us to listen. And so you give them the hook and you give them a message, and then let them guide the rest of it. That I do a Ask Peach Anything with as many of my talks as I can, and typically with adults at the end of you know what would be a keynote. I might get one, maybe two questions. I open it up. You can ask me anything, open book, ask me any question you want, and I'll tell you the most honest answer I can give you. And when I do anything with younger kids, you know, under 18, I did one at Stonehill where you're going to be, Mark, tomorrow, and
College?
in
Yeah.
Stonehill College, and
I've
it was
performed there.
and it was an hour. It was over an hour, and I could have
Question and answer?
there could have been more question and answer. They were just I gave them a message that was one of hope, optimism, and love, and making a difference in the world. And then after I gave them the message and the deliverable with me, then said, "Hey guys, ask me anything." And I gave myself 15 minutes because I was like, "This is going to be, you know, there's 500 kids there." So take a few minutes for them to leave and everything. And an hour plus later, I'm like, "Hey, I got to go. I got to catch a flight to Alaska, so I'm going to be possibly miss it." And it was crazy, and I didn't realize that. And so that's the one thing I've noticed is the younger generations want to be able to learn a little and share a lot, and they don't get to do that in many cases because in a lot of places, we just did this podcast I was touching on before. You know, this young man, he's going to be a senior in high school, and he's fighting for a moment of silence for 9/11 in his school, and he's got a good case, and he's been fighting it since 9/11 of last year, and it still isn't an answer, but he's not stopping, which I love. So that's the one thing I've caught with that. But that hook is that's the necessity, is you have to have that hook, and you have to know that you got it. It's like fishing, you know, you got it set. You got to make sure you know you got it set.
that's inspiring and encouraging. You know, I think that, you know, we're fighting such a difficult time right now with like the overuse of social media and the fact that, you know, so many kids are so hooked on it and, you know, on looking good and all the stuff that's happening, the anxious generation kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That the fact that there's still a sense of purpose in the world and a desire to make a difference is great. And you know, I try to remind myself of that, and I'm often very positively surprised by some of the things that have been accomplished by young people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. They get it. They get it. They know how to use social media to make change. We seem to use social media just to talk
To
about
create
ourselves.
chaos. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I forgot to ask, are those books, did you self-publish or were you traditionally published?
You know, self-published.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah. Well, Josh has got his book coming out next year. So we both and I we're self-published. So I just wanted to ask you about that. You have the audiobook versions, right?
Yeah, there's I think two of them have audio. I think Buddha in the Trenches and Bulletproof might be on audio. I'm not sure. I may be wrong. UnHypnosis might be on audio also. I just don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next? What are you working on? You got another book or you just want to, you know, continue to
I
book
don't know.
shows?
It's a good question. Like I said, I backed off the speaking circuit for some time, and I really kind of jumped into this mind magic thing because it was so delightful to me, and I'm not sure where it's going completely. But it's like starting from scratch. It's like, you know, I was doing these big events, and now I'm doing shows for like, you know, 100 people
Yeah.
instead of 1,000 people or more. But I'm really loving it, and I'm really crafting it so that the message that I've always wanted to share, the one that we've been talking about here, comes through with the entertainment. So that gives me a sense of purpose, and I'm going to take that show on the road. I'll be doing shows around the country starting in the winter.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's good. And what is your best way to like, how have you found the most success booking gigs? Are you doing it yourself? Do you have an agency? Do you have a rep?
I've always been most successful doing it myself. I've occasionally had reps, and they've almost always disappointed me. So I've mostly done my own. What about you, Josh?
I do everything by myself up until probably 5 months from now. Hopefully, I've given somebody an offer
Yeah.
to start after the next new year. So I have trust issues. That
Yeah.
first and foremost. That
Yeah.
I mean, I'm again open book. So I feel like I represent. You know, they say in courts the worst representation is self-representation. Well, I think that's the opposite if you're good at it and if you're a public speaker. And so you can, you know, when you start out, I mean, when I started, I was charging nothing, right? And then all of a sudden I was able to charge $500 and then 1,500 and then 5,000. And now, you know, close this year, you know, I could be getting five-figure keynotes for just an ordinary guy that lives in Eastern Massachusetts that has some good stories and makes you think a little bit differently. Um, so what I found is that some of my friends that have agents, you know, they pay a very good percentage, and so they have to bill a lot more money than I
Yeah.
do to get the same amount of money.
Right.
And I figured out a formula that's pretty easy, and the formula is simple. I don't do contracts, I do agreements, and the agreements are very simple. And you only pay me if I did a good job, and you pay me when I'm done. And 100% of the people have paid me. I've never had to chase money. And my audience tells me, you know, I just had one the other day that said, I do everything, all of my billable speaking, I do, including travel, lodging, and expenses. I don't need to send multiple invoices or anything. So I give them a number. It's based on, you know, I track all of the different travel costs and I have it set up in regions.
Mhm.
And so I just send them I'll typically send a deposit and then the rest of it's paid in full at the end. And when COVID hit, I returned all deposits, even though I didn't need to. And
Well, first of all, bravo to you for your integrity, because there are people who didn't do that,
there were a
and
lot of people.
I know
Yeah.
some of them, and it pisses me off.
Yep.
That's the way they operate. You don't want to come at this business with a sense of clinging. Like
Yeah.
I've got, you gave it to me, now it's mine.
Right.
You gotta be open. You gotta be willing to, you know, just keep giving. And the more you keep that open-mindedness, the more magic happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. The other thing, I did this as an experiment, and then I continued to do it for quite some time. I would do a show, like one of the ones I remember doing this at was for, not, what was the name of the company? Ambit Energy. Ambit Energy is an energy company.
Mm-hmm.
And their conference, their annual conference, was at the Bailey Hutchinson Arena in the Dallas, I think that was Dallas, Convention Center, and there were 8,000 plus people in the arena. So I was speaking to over 8,000 people. And I said, if any of you guys have any questions, here's my cell number. I gave my cell number to 8,000 people. I wanted to see what would happen. And what happens is like you get a call from 3 or 4 people.
Yep.
And they're great conversations. Right. So all the kind of protection that we put up, I've like this like 3-tier contract crap. It's like most of the protection you don't need if you're just a mensch, if you're just being a good person. People respect that. People, you've got an automatic, barrier of light around you that's not going to be pierced by anybody who is not meant to get in there. And it's just
I give my home phone number. One, I don't like text message. And then when people look it up, they see my mother's name and they realize that I've had the phone number since 1991 when it was a party line. But I put that.
What's a home phone?
A home phone number. It's a landline. Yeah, I got it. I still have it. I got it through one of those phone jack things, but it forwarded to my, I forwarded to my cell phone. But the reality is they can't text me. I hate text message. A text message is so informal, drives me crazy, causes communication issues between Mark and I, which we can't, we've got to work through, which never going to text them again, and I'm going to be happy about it. But
I text you. You just don't text me back. You just call me.
I text my orders to you, and I'm supposed to email them, and then I mess them up. So, no, I give my home phone number, and I close with a poster from my car wash. It says, if I did a good job, tell your friends. If I did a bad job, tell me, which makes the onus that if they say something bad about me at lunch to their friends, and they didn't say it to me, then that's an out of jail card for me. And if I did a good job, they tell. So my business started 6 years ago officially. I did my first talk on stage free in 2009. Didn't realize I could be a potential speaker until 2015, and then 2018 started to be awesome. And that's when I started to do billing. And so over the last 6 years, I've been able to have 80% of my clients be return clients. So I was just in Albuquerque for the 4th time.
That's amazing. Really good.
Yeah. So it's recreating yourself, coming up with new content. So last year was Living Your Legacy, and it was off of the Michael Jordan Air movie. This year is going to be on balance, which is crazy how we talked about balance in February, and I've got an opportunity to deliver an opening general session for an organization I've been a part of for 20 years. And I said, what's the theme of your conference this year? And they said, balance. And I'm like, well, all right. Well, now I've got some new content. I can't learn how to ride a unicycle in time because I'm too fat, but otherwise I'm going to put something together. That was going to be my thing. I heard about the balance thing with Mark. I'm like, it'd be really cool if I could go out on stage on a unicycle. And then I found out that unicycles have 200-pound weight limits, and I'm over that. So that ship has sailed for the time being.
They make those. I bought one of these, like, I forget what it's called. It's like an electric
one wheel.
Yeah, like a one wheel.
Yeah, I tried doing it in Canada, almost broke my hip.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, no, it's really dangerous. Yeah. But, no, I'm not doing it. I want to do the pedal one, and so I like challenges, and so I was reading about it, and they said you can be somewhat proficient in pedaling a unicycle 1 hour a day for 30 days. I was like, I can figure that out and go, put pads on and do all that, and that'd just be kind of cool. It's like old school, but yeah, I got to listen.
1 hour a day. If you could do it for an hour, then you're already proficient.
Yeah. Well, practice for an hour a day, I guess. I've got I looked at all the lessons. I went on YouTube. I did a whole bunch of background work. Mark, I told you this. I bought a unicycle.
Yeah.
And it came to the house. It was like, weight limit 200 pounds. I'm like, oh, shoot. That's going to take one of my legs. So, yeah. But, no, you're spot on. I think that we make things so much more difficult by adding complexity to a deal that if we can just say, one of the things would be awesome is be better humans by being better to humans. And so the first way to do that is with trust, right? And the first way to do that is to say, hey, look, Here's what my fee is. I trust that you're going to pay me. I'm going to do a good job. I mean, who wants to screw a company that's titled Be Awesome? Like, I'm telling you what to do, right? Be awesome, pay me. So I make it very simple, and it hasn't always been easy. I'm sure that you can relate that the first time that you increased your speaker fee and you were wondering why you did it, because what's so different? And it's like, well, I've got 100 more keynotes under my belt, or I've got this much experience, or I've just seen other people that get to bill a lot more that didn't have as compelling a story or didn't get capture the audience as much or whatever it is, but you still have that kind of that fear, uncertainty, and doubt in yourself. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I did it. And this makes sense. And now I can do so much more. Now I can give more, or whatever, whatever the missions are. So um
And
yeah, I love that you
in
give your cell
fact,
phone out. And you're right that nobody calls. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, call me. I challenge you, please. Like, I give out this number because nobody calls. So have at it.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Well, in your case, we're getting close to the time, but I wanted to ask, since you're kind of a case study for me, Dr. Steve, where it seems like, the later you got in your life, the more you realize what your passions were, and now you really have gotten that funnel down. Like, what would you tell yourself from 20 years ago about, pursuing your passion, or just, you know, doing what you love to do? Because that's really what it's all about right now for you.
yeah, I would, if I had the opportunity to talk to myself from 20 or so years ago, or probably even longer ago, it's almost every time that I dragged my feet to make a change, it was painful. And when I finally made the change, my first thought was, why didn't I do this sooner? So it's almost always about speed of implementation. If I get an idea of something I want to try, I just freaking go do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that.
Because like, well, why not? Like, so you fall, so big deal. It's like, you got to get your ego out of this game anyway. And thankfully, I think that's one of those kind of cultural changes. I don't think we're as egotistical as we used to be as a society. Maybe I'm wrong about that. When I see like some people, like great performers and things, they're not like coming from like the Hollywood superstar kind of vibe. They're like just regular people.
Mhm.
Maybe become more informal. So if you're a regular person and you screw up, people are okay with that, right?
Yeah.
So if
You
that's the
strike.
case, that means you've got some latitude to make mistakes. You've got some latitude to, try something and fail at it and then try again. And yeah, I would totally say just go for it. Just do it and see what happens. This new show, this Mind Magic show, is a little over a year old. And it wouldn't have happened until I booked the date, right?
Mhm.
That's like you could make all the machinations in your head are great, but when you book the date, then it's like, that's the, build a plane while you're flying it kind of thing. Now I've got to do it because there's a date, because there are people waiting to see me on that day, and I've got to have something to show them on that day. So I'm going to put myself into it.
That's great.
It seems like you've enjoyed the ride,
I'd
which a lot of
say
a lot
most
of
of the time
people
I've enjoyed it a lot.
a lot of people, and not necessarily the chiropractor part, but I think the professional speaking and the book writing and stuff. I think a lot of people, myself included at times, were striving to get to the goal opposed to enjoying the ride to get there. And it sounds to me like you're enjoying the journey, not necessarily looking for the goal in sight. And that's
100%. Yeah, I don't even really have a goal, actually.
it's
It's
good.
like,
That's what I like. Finally, somebody that doesn't have goal setting on the
it's
agenda here.
like
Good.
it's going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I've kind of let a lot of that go because most of the goal setting I've done in the past was it's always so arbitrary anyway. It's
Hmm.
like, I'm going to make $500,000 by such and such and so and so. It's like, well, why? Like, what does that actually represent in my life? It's maybe it's good to have that if that's what motivates you. But if you're motivated anyway, if you're
Mm.
enthused about what you're doing
Hmm.
and you're just doing it with this attitude that I'm not going to be attached to the outcome, but I'm going to be very much present to the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. This is great. Do you have any other questions for Josh and I, or any parting tips for us as we pursue our passions?
I think we covered a lot of good tips here. I'll just reiterate my favorite one, which is don't believe everything you think, which is that's my ultimate message for all of us, because we're automatic beings who think automatic thoughts and then live underneath the bondage of those thoughts. And I need to say it because I need to hear it for myself too, because Like every insight that I have, it only lasts as long as I allow it to last, right? Like I think it was, I think one of the Buddhas, no, it wasn't the Buddha, I think it was the Dalai Lama, but it said something about like your spiritual path is like fresh baked bread.
Mm.
Like, the bread from 3 days ago doesn't taste very good. You're not going to get anything out of it. You got to bake it all over again. You got to do the work all over again. You got to, keep on reminding yourself.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So, and so I need to remind myself, one of the reasons I do these kinds of things is to remind myself, what I believe, what I've done, and what's important.
Yeah. Well, you've been a great guest. I'm sorry I kept you waiting a little bit. And Josh, thanks for texting me the reminder to get your acting gear today. But
Yeah, well, it's one of the few times that text messages worked out for me. So I'm going to take that and run with it. So that's good. No, this has been great. Thank you. It's been great to meet you, and good luck with the Mind Magic tour. How do people find you? If they want to book you or learn more about any of your programs, your books, and all that fun stuff? Are you on social media and you
So
specialize?
I'm on Facebook. I don't do much on Instagram, although I should, but I don't. I have a website, stevetaubman.com. It's Steve, Taubman.com. And I've got a website for Mind Magic, which is mindmagic.guru, Guru.
Mm.
Well, look at that.
.com wasn't available, but .guru is even better, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, that worked out.
Yeah.
Guru. Okay. Awesome. Josh, I gotta save my voice for tomorrow. So why don't you? I started the show. Why don't you close it out for us?
Yeah, no, this has been another great episode, closing out action-packed day. I got to thank every episode because he deserves every bit of it. The man behind the curtain, Adam, our director over here at ECAT Studios, it's kind enough to give us the time and the space. We haven't asked this in a while, and sometimes we get caught up in how great we're doing. We're in the top 2.5%, I think, now of all podcasts, which is pretty good. With 3.5 million podcast channels out there. But one of the ways that really helps us is with 5-star rating and review. So if we did a good job, if you liked what you're listening to, if you become a new listener or you're a long-time listener and just haven't clicked that button yet, scroll down or right on Spotify, there's a star rating. You hit the 5 stars, 5 stars being the best. If we haven't earned the 5 stars, send me an email, josh@beawesome.com. Let us know what we could do better. We're constantly looking to improve. But I think that we've given you a lot of great content that we'd love to earn your 5-star rating and review to help us grow, to get more exposure, more listeners, more viewers, and be able to just continue to give you guys the content that you want and deserve. And while we're not sponsored by them, I drank, Adam, what we drank? A case of this stuff? Yeah, I'm drunk on water. Liquid Death is in the house. Mark is you were missed. I drank your share of Liquid Death water, but water in an aluminum can makes a difference in the world and the environment. They can recycle it endless amounts of time. So when choosing bottled water, choose something with an aluminum can, Liquid Death or something else. But that'll do it from here. And just remember, you are awesome. Have a great day, everybody.
Coming to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of Be Awesome. Find positivity throughout your life and work. Just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.